15 engineers tried and failed, but his nanny solved it in 30 seconds. What the single dad CEO did next. The modern glass conference room at Sterling Automotive buzzed with frustrated energy. 15 of the company's top engineers stood around the central workstation, their faces showing the strain of 3 weeks spent chasing a software bug that threatened to delay their revolutionary electric vehicle launch by 6 months. Nathan Sterling, CEO, and single father of 6-year-old Lily Pace, behind the group with controlled tension. At 34, Nathan had built Sterling Automotive from a garage startup into one of the most innovative car companies in the country. But today he felt powerless against lines of code that refused to cooperate. "Run the diagnostic again," said Dr. Michael Chen, the lead software architect, his voice carrying the weariness of someone who had been staring at screens for far too long. Maybe we missed something in the third-level integration protocols. The problem was as mysterious as it was critical. Their advanced driver assistance system worked perfectly in isolation. But the moment it interfaced with the vehicle's main computer, everything crashed. 15 brilliant minds had spent countless hours analyzing every line of code, every connection, every possible point of failure, and they were no closer to a solution. Sir Nathan's assistant appeared at his elbow. "It's almost 6:00. Should I call Miss Bailey and let her know you'll be late again?" Nathan glanced at his watch, feeling the familiar weight of trying to balance fatherhood with running a company. "Actually, ask her to bring Lily here. I promised we'd have dinner together tonight, and at this rate, I'll be here until midnight." 20 minutes later, the conference room door opened quietly. A woman who looked distinctly out of place among the sea of engineers entered. Allison Bailey appeared to be in her late 20s, with blonde hair, braided back practically, and wearing a simple white shirt that had clearly seen better days. Yellow cleaning gloves protected her hands, and she moved with the efficient grace of someone who spent her days managing an energetic 6-year-old. Daddy Lily Sterling burst through the door behind her, Nanny immediately running to Nathan with boundless energy. "Allie and I made cookies, and we saved you the ones with extra chocolate chips." Nathan's face softened completely as he lifted his daughter momentarily, forgetting the crisis that had consumed his entire day. "That sounds perfect, sweetheart. Just let Daddy finish this meeting, and then we'll have our dinner and cookies." "What's everyone looking at?" Lily asked, with the curiosity that children brought to everything interesting. "We're trying to fix something very complicated," Nathan explained gently. "Like when your favorite toy breaks, but much harder to understand." Allison stood quietly near the door, holding Lily's backpack, and clearly trying not to intrude the important business meeting. But Nathan noticed the way her eyes moved to the large monitor, displaying the problematic code, and how her expression shifted from polite disinterest to focused attention. "Miss Bailey." Nathan said, "Please don't feel like you need to wait. I know you probably have evening plans." "Actually, Mr. Sterling," Allison said quietly, "if you don't mind me asking, what exactly is the problem you're trying to solve?" Dr. Chen looked up from his keyboard with a barely concealed frustration. "It's a software integration issue," he said in the tone usually reserved for explaining complex topics to people who wouldn't understand. "The autonomous driving system crashes every time it attempts to communicate with the primary vehicle network." Allison nodded slowly, her gaze returning to the code on the screen. "May I take a look?" The question hung in the air for a moment, creating an uncomfortable silence as 15 highly educated engineers processed the idea that their nanny was asking to examine their work. Nathan noticed the exchange of glances, the slight smiles that suggested his employees thought Lily's caregiver was being presumptuous. "Allison," Nathan said gently, "this is pretty specialized stuff. We've had our best people working on it for weeks." "And I understand," Allison replied, her voice carrying a quiet confidence that made Nathan look at her more carefully. "But sometimes fresh eyes see things that familiarity misses. Would it hurt to let me look for just a moment?" Nathan studied this woman who had been caring for his daughter for 8 months. Realizing that despite spending every evening in her company, he knew very little about her background, beyond her excellent references and Lily's obvious adoration for her. Of course, Nathan said, gesturing toward the workstation. Please. The engineers stepped aside with patronizing courtesy, clearly expecting this to be a brief distraction before they returned to their serious work. Allison approached the monitor, her yellow-gloved hands moving to the keyboard with a familiarity that immediately caught Nathan's attention. For 30 seconds, Allison stuttered the code in complete silence, her eyes scanning the lines with focused intensity. Then, without fanfare, she began typing. Her fingers moved across the keyboard with fluid precision, someone who thought in code as naturally as spoken language. Within moments, she had navigated to a section of the program that the engineers had examined countless times. But she was looking at something specific, something that had apparently escaped their notice. Here, Allison said quietly, pointing to a particular line of code. You have a memory allocation conflict in the handshake protocol. The autonomous system is trying to access the same memory space that the primary network reserves for security functions. They're essentially fighting over the same resource. Dr. Chen leaned forward, studying the area she had indicated. But we've checked the memory allocation dozens of times. The addresses are clearly defined and shouldn't overlap. They don't overlap in static allocation, Allison explained patiently. But look at what happens during dynamic scaling. When the system load increases, the autonomous functions expand their memory footprint, and that's when they collide with the security protocols. She made a few quick keystrokes, adding what appeared to be a simple buffer zone between the two systems. Try running it now. The room fell completely silent as Dr. Chen initiated the diagnostic program. Everyone watched the monitor as the two systems came online, began their communication protocol, and for the first time in 3 weeks connected seamlessly without a single error message. That's impossible, whispered one of the junior engineers. We've been over that code section hundreds of times. Sometimes Allison said gently. We get so focused on the complex possibilities that we miss the simple solutions. I learned that lesson the hard way. Nathan stared at this woman who had just solved in 30 seconds a problem that had stumped his entire engineering team for weeks. Allison, he said slowly, how did you know to look there? Allison's cheeks colored slightly, and she suddenly seemed very aware that she was wearing cleaning gloves in a room full of executives. I have some background in software development, she said modestly. I noticed the memory allocation pattern looked familiar. Some background, Dr. Chen repeated, his voice filled with newfound respect. Miss Bailey, what kind of software development experience do you have? Allison hesitated, clearly uncomfortable with the attention. I used to work in autonomous vehicle programming. Actually, before I became Lily's nanny, the revelation hung in the air like a challenge to everything the engineers thought they understood about expertise and credentials. Nathan felt his entire perception shifting as he realized that the woman he'd hired to care for his daughter was apparently more qualified to solve his company's technical problems than his entire engineering staff. You used to work in autonomous vehicle programming, Nathan repeated, his mind racing with questions. Where, when, and why are you working as a nanny? I was the lead programmer for the Aurora project at TechFlow Industries, Allison explained quietly. We were developing the next generation of self-driving systems until the company lost funding and the project was canceled 2 years ago. Nathan felt his breath catch. The Aurora project had been legendary in automotive circles, a cutting-edge program that had promised to revolutionize autonomous driving before disappearing suddenly from the industry landscape. You were lead programmer for Aurora. Dr. Chen's voice carried a mixture of awe and disbelief. That was some of the most advanced AI integration work anyone had ever attempted. It was, Allison agreed sadly. But when TechFlow went under all of us, Aurora team members became essentially unemployable. The project was so specialized that our skills didn't translate to other companies, and the industry rumors about why the project failed made it impossible to get interviews elsewhere. Nathan was beginning to understand, so you took the nanny position because you needed work. I took the nanny position because I love working with children, and because Lily reminded me that there are more important things in life than writing perfect code, Allison said. her voice growing stronger. I have a master's degree in computer science and 5 years of autonomous vehicle experience, but I also have a 6-year-old who thinks I'm the best cookie maker in the world. Both things make me who I am. The room was completely silent as 15 engineers and one CEO processed what they had just witnessed. Nathan looked at this remarkable woman who had been living in his house, caring for his daughter, and apparently carrying the knowledge to solve his company's most critical problems, all while wearing yellow cleaning gloves and worrying about homework and bedtime stories. Allison, Nathan said carefully, "Would you be interested in a different kind of position here at Sterling Automotive?" Allison glanced at Lily, who had been watching the entire exchange with wide-eyed fascination. "Mr. Sterling," Allison said quietly, "I appreciate the offer, but Lily needs stability in her life. She's already lost her mother, and changing caregivers again would be difficult for her." "Who says anything about changing caregivers?" Nathan replied, his mind already working through possibilities. "What if we created a position that allowed you to do both Chief of Autonomous Systems Development with a schedule that ensures you're still here when Lily gets home from school?" The offer that Nathan extended to Allison revolutionized not just her career, but the entire culture at Sterling Automotive. As Chief of Autonomous Systems Development, she brought an approach to problem solving that combined technical brilliance with the patience and creativity that came from years of explaining complex ideas to a curious 6-year-old. But more importantly, she continued as Lily's caregiver, creating a unique situation where the company's most innovative engineer was also the person who helped with homework, organized playdates, and made chocolate chip cookies for important business meetings. 6 months later, when automotive industry magazines wrote about Sterling Automotive's breakthrough in autonomous vehicle technology and their revolutionary approach to work-life balance, they focused on innovative management techniques and cutting-edge engineering solutions. But Nathan always smiled when he read those articles, knowing that the real story was much simpler and much more human. Sometimes the most valuable expertise comes not from the people with the most impressive titles, but from those who understand that solving complex problems requires both technical knowledge and the wisdom that comes from caring for what matters most. And sometimes the best business decisions happen when we recognize that the most important qualifications aren't always the ones listed on a resume, but the ones that come from understanding that brilliance often wears yellow gloves and measures success not just in code that works, but in children who feel loved and secure. In a world that often mistakes credentials for capability, Allison Bailey had reminded everyone at Sterling Automotive that the most innovative solutions often come from people who see problems differently, not because they lack expertise, but because they understand that the most important systems we build are the ones that support human connection growth, and the recognition that everyone deserves to be valued for the full range of their gifts.